Are you a networking person looking to get more into automation but are frustrated with the process of setting up your own lab environment? Then I may have a solution for you. Hi, I'm Tony Burke. I'm a networking instructor, network automation instructor, Python instructor, and skydiving instructor, and I put together a free set of instructions using only free software that you can use to build an all-in-one contained automation lab, including a leaf spine topology, Ansible, and a built-in IDE. And you can do all of this in a VM that runs with 16 gigabytes of memory and 8 virtual CPU cores. I call it the Autobox, and it's part of a larger project that I'm doing called Project NERD, or the Network Engineering Resource for Development, to create various types of VMs and containers in order to practice automation, to play with the different tools that are out there, and develop your automation skills. The guiding principle of building this VM was to include only tools that are free so that you can use and practice and all this without paying anyone any money. So other than the hardware, of course, that you're running this on, everything here is going to be free. I also try to keep the build as simple as possible, using as few tools as possible so that you're not overwhelmed with all the different new tools and technologies that you may not be familiar with. That was one of the biggest frustrations that I had when I was learning automation, was there were too many new tools and new technologies thrown at me at once. So let me give you a tour of the Autobox. The base is a Linux VM with 16 gigs of RAM and 8 virtual CPU cores. You can use more, of course, but that's the minimum for this. It's running Alma Linux, which is a Linux distribution that's roughly based off of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So if you're in the enterprise environment and you've used Linux in there before, you probably are pretty familiar with this environment. It's also very similar to what CentOS Linux used to be before Red Hat discontinued it. It's got a web application that's going to operate as our IDE, or Integrated Development Environment, and it's called Code Server. So Code Server is a project where they took Microsoft VS Code, and VS Code is probably the most popular development environment used in network automation. And VS Code from Microsoft is free and it's open source, so they just took that and put it into a web application, which is great. There's the popular lab environment called Container Lab, so that'll be installed on here as well. And for the network operating system, we're going to use Arista's Containerized EOS, or CEOS. I chose Containerized EOS because it's got full data plane and control plane, and Arista makes it very easy to get a legal copy for lab use, and it's free. The topology contains 2 spines, 4 leaves, 2 hosts, and an external router. You can create your own topologies, of course, but there's already one pre-made for you to get started. And finally, to automate all of this, there's going to be Python installed, of course, as well as Ansible. So to log into the system, you can go in through SSH, or you go in through the IDE, which is how I typically do it. Go to the IP address of the VM on port 8080. We give the password, and then we've got an interface that looks exactly like VS Code on your desktop, because it is VS Code just running as a web app. I'll go to the hamburger icon here, and I'll open up a new terminal window, and I can SSH into the leafs. The default password that Container Lab uses for CEOS is just admin, and I can do things like run an Ansible playbook to add user accounts to the leafs and spines, or do anything else that I need to do through Ansible and play around. I can use just standard Ansible playbooks, I can do Python scripts, I can do things like Arista AVD, and otherwise fully explore network automation. And you can build this Autobox in less than an hour on your hypervisor with just a couple of simple instructions. So if you're looking to get into network automation, I think this is the perfect platform to get started. As long as you can create a VM that has 16 gigs of RAM and 8 vCPU cores, you're good to go. So give it a try and let me know what you think.